Good evening, everybody. Today we're looking at stamp duty land tax. This has obviously been popular for quite a few years in terms of people looking at the impact of SDLT, and we see quite a few changes coming in over the years, especially since 2014. And the Office for Budget Responsibility, accidentally, I'm being told, left a notice in one of their documents saying the additional SDLT charge would increase from 3% to 4%, which puts it in line with Wales and Scotland. And of course, they weren't meant to leave that information out in the open, which is interesting now, in the sense that there are some people who say certain information is given out before the spring statement and the budget to mentally prepare people for what's coming. Others may say it was a mistake, but an extra 1% on SDLT is going to be another blow for landlords, because this is obviously for people who own a second or additional property. Because if you're buying property for yourself, you sell your existing home, buy a new one, you don't pay the additional 3% charge. Or if you own your own home, buy a new home and haven't sold your old home, and you've got 3 years within which to sell it, and if you do, you obviously claim back the additional 3% SDLT. But that's going up to 4%, which is a 33% increase in SDLT on that additional 3%, which is a significant number of based on where you are. So if you're living in London or the southeast, that's going to be a huge number. If you're in the northeast, it's still going to be significant, because a 33% increase is a 33% increase. And what this really means is you might now see that some people who were buying property for buy to let may not buy property for buy to let. And I guess the flip side argument is, or if that happens, then that creates opportunity for first time buyers or other people who don't own their own home to buy a property. I don't think that's true, simply because uh, first time buyers or people who want to buy their own home, just because buy-to-let landlords aren't buying a property, it doesn't mean that those people can now automatically start to afford to buy a property. That's not how it works. If they haven't got the access and the means and the ability to buy a property, then just because landlords aren't buying a property, that's not going to improve the situation for them. What it does mean, I think, is if landlords think this is penal, which obviously they will do because there's extra money going out of their pocket, uh, it means more properties may sit empty for a while. Now, that may be hard for people to grasp right now, because the property market's hot. Properties are selling very, very quickly. So yesterday I was talking to somebody looking to buy a property in Cambridge, on the market for 1.7 million. He offered 1.95 million, and the property was sold for 2.2 million. So £500,000 above asking price, sold within a week. That's just an example from the last 24 hours that somebody shared with me of a property in Cambridge. So right now, properties are selling quicker. If this happens, that may mean in certain areas properties sell slower, and that means properties may be empty. But if properties are empty, that means they're not being used. If they're not being used, then that means there'll be less supply of housing in the market for people who want to rent property. Now, we already know there's a housing crisis. We already know there's a shortage in the supply of homes to rent. So having more empty properties isn't going to be the best way to go forward. Furthermore, obviously, this means a cash flow disadvantage for landlords. So naturally speaking, any business person, what are they going to do? Well, if their costs go up, they're going to pass those costs to their customers or clients, or in this case, to their tenants, which means a further increase in rent for people who are renting property. And with the cost of living crisis and energy bills going up, with the inflation and with everything else that's going on, that's going to make it even tougher for those people. So really, this change coming in is going to impact the same people that the government said is trying to help. And really, I think this is all being done to put money back into the exchequer, for all the financial assistance that's been given over the last couple of years towards COVID. Now, understandably, obviously, we all need to pay that back over a certain number of years, possibly more than years. I'll say a few decades. But increasing stamp duty land tax by 33% on the 3% additional surcharge, I don't think is the way to go. So if you're watching this video live right now, thank you for watching. Post a comment or a question to let me know what you actually think of this. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? What impact is it going to have? Is it going to affect you? Has a 3% SDLT put you off particular deals? If it goes up to 4%, is that going to put you off even more deals? So I'd be keen to hear your thoughts to see what you think will be the impact of all of this. Now, on the other side, interest rates have gone up by 0.25 percentage points. So simply speaking, obviously interest rates have been low for a very long time. There was only one railway that they could go, and that was north, because negative in interest rates aren't a good idea for anybody. So with inflation increasing, one way to control that, of course, is to increase interest rates, and that's what the Bank of England is doing. And I think you'll see these increases happening on a regular basis until we get to a more sustainable and manageable level in terms of inflation, whether that's 2%, 2.5%, or something around there. Yeah, but I think the interest rates will have to increase by at least another 1.5%, 2% before we see that being evened out, which means higher costs for future money being borrowed, which therefore means inevitably we end up in the same place as we did with SDLT. People who are renting property will end up having their rents increased because the mortgage costs for landlords is higher. So it's kind of doom and gloom for renters, unfortunately, not because property investors are creating a situation, but the marketplace out there and some of the actions of the government aren't helping at all. So watch that space and make sure, obviously, when you're taking out a mortgage, especially if you're in a variable rate, do a calculation and a stress test in terms of what the impact of increases in interest rates over the next 3 to 5 years will have on your business. Of course, if you're on fixed rates, depending on when those expire, some of these changes may not affect you. So, but then it's a compromise between, do I fix the rate and pay a higher rate of interest right now, or do I go with a lower variable rate and then kind of hedge my bets? Or no, you're not hedging really, but just hope and that over the next 3 to 5 years, interest rates don't increase as much as the fixed rate. I personally wouldn't take that risk. I'd rather fix it for 5 years, which is exactly what I do on all of my deals. Partly because I can't even bother to refinance every 2 or 3 years, so it saves me that headache. It gives me certainty in terms of exactly what I'm paying. So if interest rates do go up, most of all of my deals are fixed. I think the one that expires next is in 3 years' time. So apart from obviously the new properties that I buy, all the existing ones are going to be pretty okay. But do that calculation to make sure that you know what your cash flow will look like, because the last thing you want to do is obviously get into cash flow problems. And unlike most businesses where you can adapt, amend, change your business model, not so flexible and easy to do in property. There are certain things you could do. For example, you might, if you're doing buy-to-let, you might think of going into serviced accommodation or changing some of those units into serviced accommodation. So you've got some options, but it's not as flexible as other businesses in terms of where you can kind of increase your pricing. You can do quite a bit of cross-selling. You can try and increase or reduce some of your overhead, some of your costs. You can look to get more customers, more clients, more patients to be in your business. So all of those of opportunities enable a business to cover some of its increasing costs. But for landlords, it's not that flexible. So you got to make sure you get it as right or as close to right as you can to save yourself having those problems. But watch out for the budget spring statement next week when it comes out. I'll give you my analysis, and I'll either do a I'll do both. In fact, I'll do a Facebook Live, and then I'll post a more detailed video on YouTube. So watch out for that. Until next week, bye for now.